moving again in a slightly different direction and ask you a little about minimum effort ingest. So I think there's sort of growing interest in this sort of approach, and we often seem to box ourselves into the position of trying to get our content into a perfect state before we put it into our digital preservation and long-term repository. And there's a gradually growing reaction to that. Our Danish colleagues summed it up very nicely, this concept of minimum effort ingest to get the content in pretty quickly, minimum metadata, minimum quality checking, but then to return to the data once it's in the repository and it's safe at a later date and do a bit more quality checking and gradually expand that metadata. I think you touched on this a little bit in your intro presentation, showing that you could really grow the metadata using the tools that you have, but perhaps it'd be great if you could expand on that a little bit more for us.
Yeah, sure. And we see this a lot as well. Again, coming at it from a slightly different angle, it's not always due to design or choice. It's often because the timescale associated with a private sector project means that we need to move quickly. Therefore, a minimum effort ingestion is favoured over doing a long, maybe well-planned project, let's say. So yes, we've got familiarity of doing this. We also saw it a lot last year around the time of GDPR, even though we know that GDPR wasn't quite the tidal wave that a lot of people thought it would be, but we did have a lot of clients come to us who wanted to show that they'd made a positive step towards meeting GDPR or just any data protection laws, really. So in this instance, we looked at long-term archive almost as a container for their documents and their data. So we can actually do an initial migration and they're safe in the knowledge that we're now within a preservation platform, nothing can be leaked. And then we can use the tools within long-term archive to edit, filter, and of course for us within the private sector, really important factor is to be able to also do a controlled deletion. Now I know, again, for some people within memory institutions that's quite unusual, but if you put yourself in a business who maybe have got contractual data, or in life science you've got product-related data that you do definitely want to delete after a certain period of time, then we've got deletion rules that we can set as well that can show that it's been done controlled. So yes, we do this quite often, and we manage it through data management rules. So what the rules allow you to do is allow you to select a particular area, I can show that there, and you can then find a specific object and you could update the properties associated with it, or you can go in and actually run a deletion. So here's just one example, meeting the life science Udrelex 7-year reason for holding on to documentation. So through the ability to search for documents or objects within the system, you can then go and edit and add data to them, or equally you can get rid of them. In the scenario where you were doing a bulk change to your metadata, we also then run the schemas. So down on the bottom left here, you can see metadata schema. So on the initial ingest, it would have been a very simple schema. You can then overlay that with a more comprehensive one to give you the metadata set that you actually do want now that you've got it within the system. So it's a fairly common approach that we have. And then the other aspect that we have is the ability to update on bulk. So if you have a common property that you need to update, we have a bulk updater tool which allows you to do so. I think the best use case for this is many people have electronic records within long-term archive, but then also use the product to reference their physical records. So it almost acts as a records index almost. And if you were moving the location of some of those physical records, then our bulk updater tool can also allow you to do that. So yeah, we fully support the minimum effort ingestion, and I'll just take you back to the conversation around connectors as well. That's what we're trying to achieve with connectors and adapters, so that the actual effort that the end user goes to is completely minimal. You know, it's almost just pushing it through because we've already predicted the metadata that we require to work with one particular system.